Hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So I'm doing quite well uploading this week. It's late on Thursday and this is for Friday so that we can revert to Fragrance Friday when I upload on a Friday this year. And I wanted to talk about my latest fragrance purchase, which as you can see is a Tom Ford special blend purchase. I think it's probably his latest private blend release, only just released around Christmas, New Year here in the UK. Still quite difficult to get your hands on. I got mine at Selfridges. It's in the boutiques. I don't know if it's stocked anywhere else in London. I know that America, as always, had it before us, and I think in New York it was released in September for New York Fashion Week. So it's Tom Ford Fucking Fabulous, and the name has probably been the most controversial thing about it. Let's see if YouTube pick up there and edit the language. I hope not. It's interesting to me how hot under the collar this has made people. I do read quite a few perfume forums, and the posters are largely pretty sophisticated and, you know, have a lot of interest in niche fragrances and are very well read about them. And a lot of people seem to be quite bothered about what it's been called, which I think is interesting. Do I think it's a marketing ploy? Yes, of course it is. Does it work? Yeah, I suspect it does. I made a point of going in to go and smell this, whereas although I am a huge Tom Ford fan, and if I happen to be in a store that stocks his fragrances, I will stop by the counter and definitely try out new fragrances. And I have to say, Tom Ford's about the only house that's actually kind of invited me to any special events. Not that special, but, you know, the odd kind of marketing evening. And I've played about with the perfumes. But I don't usually rush to the store when there's a couple of new releases in the private blend, and frankly there are several every year. It's a big collection now, but I did read about this and I did rush in, so to that extent, you know, it's a good marketing tool. The somewhat cheesy and I would suggest slightly unbelievable story is that it was christened by Tom Ford himself, who uttered these immortal words when he smelt it at a meeting, a board meeting. I don't know, does he not smell these perfumes a bit before then? It sounds a bit odd to me, but there you go. Whoever thought up the name, I think it's probably worked. What about the fragrance itself? Because opinions pretty divided if you read the runes on the various websites. Overall, I think it's had pretty poor reviews. Let's look at the packaging first of all. As you can see, it differs from the usual packaging. I got out my Champaca Absolute, which is the usual packaging. They have done colourless, transparent bottles. I'm thinking of Santal Blush, which I had, for example, and the Rouge Jasmine, I think, was see-through with a red label, maybe a red top. And then, of course, the Soleil collection they do in the white. But generally, the private blend all come in these pretty opaque but shiny black or dark brown, in fact, bottles to protect the fragrance from daylight, with usually the gold label and the gold top and the lettering, which I really like. I do think it looks classy and expensive. This one is the first one I've seen coming in the completely matte with a very plain black and white, quite masculine labelling, and the top again is black rather than gold or silver. So yeah, a definite departure on the packaging. I'm never that keen on matte generally, but you know, I don't feel strongly about it. And you see the usual box behind. What about the perfume? I've really struggled to find out who is the nose who actually created this one. Quite often you can find out but I haven't read anywhere who it's supposed to be. I always find that quite interesting because you can then cross-reference other fragrances. This fragrance is, to me, quite different from a lot of the fragrances that I like or have tried. It is similar to one fragrance which I'll mention in a bit, but the notes are, well, it's described as an oriental leather, which I suppose I might go with. I don't find it very typical of an oriental. I can get the leather there, and a lot of people more so than I do, particularly on the dry down. I would describe it as a gourmand leather, which sounds really, really weird, but there's a lot of sweetness in this, which comes from one of the notes, the bitter almond, which I get very strongly. A lot of people get it, and I think it's the kind of controversial ingredient here, because a lot of people feel that the fragrance is too sweet. I've heard it described as Play-Doh. I get what they're talking about. I don't think it smells like Play-Doh. I wouldn't wear it if I did. But I understand what they're saying, that there is a very strong marzipan almost fragrance. Now, with the leather, I quite like that. I think it's a very winter fragrance. I find it quite a warming fragrance. I haven't told you the other notes. I should have done. The notes are said to be bitter almond, tonka bean, which is just giving some sweetness, orris root, which I'm not that familiar what that note is in the mix, leather, clary sage. It doesn't say so anywhere that I have seen official, but a lot of people get lavender in it. And I would say there is also something floral there. Some people I've read say they think there's heliotrope, which is something that, you know, can make the bitter almond smell a bit warmer, a bit marzipan-like. I personally get benzoin, and I haven't really read that other people get that. So it's quite interesting what different people get. Do I love it? Probably I wouldn't say I love it. Put it this way, I think it's a one-off. It's an exclusive to the range. In other words, when they sell out, it's not going to be permanent. If that were the case with something like Black Orchid or even Champaca Absolute that I've got there in front of you, and that's my second bottle, I would be broken-hearted and I would be laying down stocks of it. I'm definitely not broken-hearted, and I won't be buying any more Tom Ford fucking fabulous. But I am enjoying wearing it, and I do think it's different. Is it worth the price? It's difficult to justify Tom Ford prices at all, I think, because they're not really niche fragrances. They, you know, are quite mass market of a certain sort. But like all his range, I find that the Silage is excellent. You know, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck when you buy a Tom Ford private blend, and that's certainly so with this one. Although surprisingly, again, I have noticed people saying that they don't think it lasts very well. I don't understand that. It definitely lasts on me. Two other notes. I wonder if it's got a bit of an iris tinge to it. I definitely get that a little bit, and I think that may be what's making me like it. Iris is a very common note in Chanel fragrances, which I often like. This is nothing like a Chanel fragrance, but, you know, there's that kind of, it's putting me in mind of it. The other thing that it really reminded me of is some Prada fragrances, and particularly Prada Infusion d'Almond. So, you know, not surprisingly, that's an almond oil-based fragrance, that there are similarities. I find Prada fragrances very persistent but light, if that makes sense. Almost kind of bitterness in it. This one is much, much sweeter and heavier than the Prada one. But, you know, there are some some similarities, but definitely this is a kind of foodie fragrance. I think it's unisex. I think it's fairly intriguing. I find the dry down as interesting. It becomes more leathery, less almondy, other than close up. I think would go back to some of the other leather fragrances. Tom Ford does a lot of leather, as you would expect for a unisex range. Some of them I find a bit overpowering, and that's not the case with this one. It's much more wearable as a woman, I think, but others will disagree. So, yeah, it's a cautious thumbs up from me. I'm definitely enjoying it. I think it will be one for the next few months. It will definitely be going away if it isn't used up. I hope it won't be after what I've paid for it by spring, and brought out again in the autumn. If you can go and have a sniff, I do think it's worth it. They often hide it away in the stores. It was hidden away in Selfridges. I had to be pretty persistent to get a sniff, and you definitely should, and see what you think. I'd be interested if anyone else has it or has smelt it, and what they think, about the slightly controversial name. What will be next? I can remember when people were shocked. Well, I didn't know they were shocked that the perfume was called opium. They were definitely shocked by the advertising campaign with Sophie Dahl all those years ago. It's all pretty tame now, isn't it? But there we go. So that's it for Fragrance Friday. I've got still lots of new products that I'm testing out. I think we might be showing some skincare over the weekend, or maybe some highlighters. They're definitely both on the agenda soon. Many thanks to all of you who took the trouble to give feedback about the volume issues. They seem, cross fingers, to be resolved. Most people appear to be able to hear me. I don't know whether it was a Apple versus the rest of the world issue, or just some people hadn't got their volume turned up on their devices. I don't know, but anyway, let me know if there are any problems, and until next time, bye for now.